If the local elections showed anything, it's that the public is furious with the government over its handling of the cost of living crisis. And they are right to be. Instead of helping people, they've raised taxes. Instead of lowering energy bills, they've offered tiny loans, only adding to people's bills next year. And instead of increasing benefits, they've slashed them. That's both by cutting universal credit by £1,000 per year and then by failing to increase benefits in line with inflation, which, according to the Bank of England, could hit 10% by the end of the year. And now ever more evidence is emerging that the cost of living crisis should in fact be considered a cost of living emergency. A survey carried out by the Food Foundation has found that more than 2 million adults in the UK have gone a day or more without eating in April. They also found that 7.3 million adults as well as 2.6 million children have been rendered food insecure since January. That means that 1 in 7 adults in the UK have limited access to food due to lack of money or other resources. It means skipping meals, lowering the nutritional quality of your food and going hungry. That's a rise of 57% in the number of adults in food insecurity, and it happened in just 3 months. In January, only 4.7 million adults were food insecure, too many already. And as you can see from these graphs, that 13.8% of households experienced food insecurity in April. It's the highest it's been since the first 2 weeks of lockdown. But 4.6% of households have, even worse, gone at least one whole day without eating food in April. That's more than were going hungry in the height of lockdown in July 2020. And people are getting really desperate. The London Fire Brigade has issued this warning. As rising energy bills hit UK homes, we've issued an urgent warning to those looking to cut costs. This follows a fire in New Malden caused by an open fire used in replace of central heating. Firefighters are concerned the blaze could be the first of many. The person who lives in this house was apparently trying to keep warm by burning timber in his living room. And it could get worse. The Bank of England has predicted that the energy price cap will go up to £2,800 in October. That's an increase of £829 on the new cap that came in this April, which now stands at £1,971. And it's an even bigger increase than the one we've just felt. But while there are no solutions coming from the government, decent proposals are coming from more unexpected quarters. Speaking to the BBC, this is Scottish Power boss Keith Anderson.
For customers, for people out there, what we're suggesting is £1,000 off the bill in October, directed to those people who need it the most and who are suffering the worst. Take that £1,000 off the bill, and the cost of it and the repayment of it can be dealt with over a 10-year period, and that can be dealt with either by spreading it across future bills of all customers or by the government also putting funding and financing into it. And that's required primarily, number one, to help people. Number two, it will help with the future debt levels, which is another cost that would end up going back to customers. And then, yes, absolutely, it would also help the companies in the sector to make sure that actually we know we'll get the money back at some point in time. Happy to delay that and to spread it, but companies need to know that they'll end up getting the money back at some point in time, given the losses that have been suffered. So we alone as a company lost £260 million last year. So this is hurting companies as well.
It's really coming to something when heads of industry are going on TV practically begging the government to help out and offering them free ideas. In case you're wondering, I know we talk a lot about, energy companies having massive windfall profits, and that's why they should have a windfall tax. Obviously, that guy saying that his company has made losses, that's because there's a distinction between the people who produce or extract the oil and gas. They're getting huge windfall profits. It's because the price of the raw materials which they sell has gone up. It is the energy companies who have to buy the oil and gas from the likes of Shell and BP. They're actually struggling because their costs have gone up. That's why we saw, a couple of months ago, all of those energy companies go bust. Just a distinction I thought might be helpful there. Ash, we've talked a lot about the cost of living crisis while you've been away. Can I get your comments? What do you make of the situation that we're currently seeing across Britain? Where do you think it could go next?
Unfortunately, we really are in the foothills of the cost of living emergency, because in October, energy prices are going to go up again. You are going to have the impact of sluggish growth, if not outright recession, as the Bank of England warned last week. And you've got some predictions that inflation is going to go up by even 10%. And I think that might even be a conservative estimate. And of course, inflation hits people on the lowest incomes the hardest. So we are in the foothills of this crisis. And if you look at how austerity impacted people, where you had a context of benefits being slashed, difficult to access, in a context where people's pay packets were, in real terms, stagnant or falling, people died. People died. People died when they were waiting for their universal credit to come through. They died when they were declared fit to work by the DWP. They died in unheated homes of starvation. There was a tragic case of a gentleman who, when he eventually passed away, was, weighed less than most children. And unless the government does something drastic, that is the kind of human cost we will be looking at, as well as the more quotidian, shall we say, privations and indignities of a cost of living emergency. So people wearing multiple jumpers, getting into bed early, having to spend the day on public transport or in the library because they can't afford to heat their own home. People who are having to make a choice between heating and eating or feeding themselves or their children. All of that is going to become even more prevalent and even more normalized because of government inaction. Now, what the government can do is twofold in addressing a cost of living crisis. It can increase the amount of money which people have in their pockets by lifting the minimum wage, by increasing the amount provided through the benefit system, or shall I say, it can control prices. Now, the government really has decided to do neither of those things. You have that £150 loan, which has to come out of your council tax anyway, and it's going to have to come out of your council tax when we are much deeper into this crisis than we are already. So it makes literally no economic sense. And you're going to end up in a context where energy companies like Scottish Power, and this is what he's worried about, are going to be sending out bills to people that they simply cannot afford to pay. And that is the situation we're looking at. Now, obviously, there is no alternative to taxpayer money being used to insulate houses from some of those bills. Whether that's putting more money through this, I think dreadful loan system that Rishi Sunak has devised, or whether it's bailouts for energy companies. Now, I think both of those things are deeply flawed because, as you pointed out, Michael, the reason why we're in this situation is because so much of our energy infrastructure is in the hands of deregulated private corporations. We're on the hook to fossil fuel giants who are enjoying record windfall profits. Oil and gas extractors are enjoying record windfall profits. And actually, the thing that the government could do, and the thing Labour should be pushing for, isn't tinkering around the edges, thinking about how do you knock off 5%, 10%, 20% even of people's energy bills. You need to say, look, taxpayer money is going into insulating people from the impact of rising energy bills. We need to nationalize the big six. Nationalize the big six, put the government in control of setting the prices of energy, and make them public assets, public utilities. And I think that does two things. One is, as I mentioned, it puts the government in a position of more control over what bills are going out to people. And secondly, also what it does is that it gets the government in a much better position when it comes to a green transition. Because if we had taken action, and this isn't just on the Conservatives, of course, although David Cameron did do his bonfire of the green crap, this is also on the Labour Party. If we had had a green transition earlier, so that would mean retrofitting houses to insulate them properly, to replace old gas central heating, to have more offshore wind, onshore wind, solar power. If we had done all those things when we first became aware that these were urgent policy priorities, British households would not be suffering because of energy price increases the way that they are now.
Absolutely. And I mean, you intimated towards it there, but it's only going to get worse. Like, the real crunch, I mean, especially when it comes to heating, is obviously going to be, when next winter kicks in, prices are going to be even higher, and people are going to have to face a whole winter ahead of them with prices at that level. And we haven't seen any indication whatsoever that this government has any intention of dealing with that in an adequate way. And it's pretty terrifying, actually.